Remember Hyrule Warriors? I sure do. And you better get used to hearing that name because I'll be bringing it up a lot in this video. Anyway, that game was the shit when I first played it. I bought both the Wii U and 3DS versions, played through story mode, and even 100%ed the Wii U version after importing the extra characters from the 3DS. Yeah, adventure mode was a grind, but there was so much variety in the roster and the combat was so much fun that the grind was not only easy to overlook, but kind of fun too. But once I was finally finished with it, I started thinking, you know what would be perfect for a Warriors game? Fire Emblem. Apparently my idea was about as original as the 40th prepubescent child on Xbox Live telling me that he's bedded my mother in the last 20 minutes, because not only did they confirm that the game was being made, they announced it as one of their major releases at Nintendo's big Switch presentation. So I guess a lot of other people had the same idea rattling around. Despite the fact that getting a Switch without having pre-ordered it would be about as difficult as insert witty analogy, that announcement was like fucking Christmas for me. I couldn't have been more excited for this game. But when I finally started playing it, I received yet another important lesson in setting your expectations too high. Perhaps I was too excited to be reasonable in my expectations, or maybe my crippling nihilism rendered me unable to feel joy at the precise moment I purchased this game. Whatever that case may be, Fire Emblem Warriors left me about as satisfied as a raging alcoholic locked in a room with nothing but water and a window peering into a wine cellar. The game's not exactly what I would call bad, but it has its fair share of problems that hold it back from being a good game as opposed to being a painfully average one. So I'll take it from the top. Like previous Fire Emblem titles, you can choose between classic permadeath and casual not from the get-go, which is rendered pretty much useless by the fact that, like the difficulty, you can change the setting later. This game has the kind of story mode you'd expect from a Warriors spin-off. It follows the game's two original characters, Rowan and Leanna, each bringing with them personalities about as flat as Lucina's chest. The game starts with Breadstick and other Breadstick, but a girl this time, having a pointless argument that serves no purpose but to characterize these two by giving girl Breadstick a pair of glasses and doing a Naruto on guy Breadstick. Maybe. I honestly can't be fucked to remember since I've seen molded cheese with more character development. Oh, and they're royalty or something. Now at the moment, all seems right with the world, but as anyone who's ever played a game or been told a story of any kind would know, some shit has to go down for the story to start going somewhere. And as if to answer that very dilemma, a giant fuck you portal opens up in the sky and monsters start pouring out to wreck some shit. In trying to escape the ensuing chaos, the twins' mother dies, with them vowing to avenge her. Or rescue her? I honestly can't remember. Either way, the twins get caught up in having to save the world from the series' recurring villain, Giant Evil Dragon that is evil. After about 6 hours, the good boys beat up the big bad dragon man with the power of friendship, or some other bullshit, and all is right with the world once more. Look, I'm really not here to critique the story, but if you want my opinion, it's good for what it is. That's not where my problems lie. I'll get to those in a second. Along the way, the twins meet characters from all corners of the Fire Emblem series. Well, if you consider Awakening and Fates all corners. What, you think there were Fire Emblem games other than Awakening and Fates? Well, you get to eat shit, because apparently Intelligent Systems and Omega Force didn't feel the same way. The only other series that gets any sort of representation whatsoever is Shadow Dragon, which is likely because of how popular Marth is. Even through DLC, we haven't gotten any Binding Blade or Radiant Dawn representation, despite Smash making Ike and Roy just as popular. I still have hope that one day we'll be able to shout Roy is our boy and we like Ike again. But alas, today is not that day. 7 out of the 23 characters in the base roster aren't from Awakening or Fate, 3 of which you'll be unlocking post-story after a bunch of tedious bullshit that exhibits the law of diminishing returns to the nth fucking degree for reasons I'll get into later. I'm actually willing to bet that the characters from Shadow Dragon were only included at the last second to stave off that very complaint. Anyway, let's talk gameplay. Like any good Warriors game, you'll be hacking and slashing through hordes of either incredibly stupid or incredibly scared enemies before inevitably getting your ass handed to you by the one guy that chose to fight back. To make things more interesting, you have the Warrior Gauge and the Awakening Gauge. Warrior Gauge lets you pull off a ridiculous fuck you attack that's specific to each character when it fills up. The Awakening Gauge, on the other hand, buffs your damage, lets you shrug off mortal blows with 1 HP, and ends with another character-specific fuck you attack when the meter runs dry. Depending on the map, you get anywhere from 1 to 4 playable characters that you can freely switch between during battle, as well as 2 to 4 additional units. When you're not controlling one of your units, you can order them to head to specific areas to capture an enemy base or defend an ally. Unfortunately, thanks to the padded helmet-worthy AI that seems to come standard issue with Warrior games, it's not uncommon to find them standing directly in front of the enemy you've sent them to attack doing fuck all. Outside of battle, you can upgrade your characters like any other game. Upgrades can range anywhere from expanding your character's combos to allowing your character to use better weapons. To upgrade your characters, you'll need to collect specific materials for each upgrade. Without a guide telling you where to find these, you'll have a pretty miserable time trying to keep all of the bloated roster up to code. Certain materials are only dropped by one type of enemy, meaning you'd have to go from map to map hunting down the one enemy you need to farm to upgrade your character. As for weapons, the quality of weapon drops is completely random, so more often than not, you'll be stuck with a ton of useless garbage. This is a Fire Emblem game though, and it brings with it two major gameplay features series fans are sure to get a kick out of. The first of the two is the weapon triangle, a basic rock, paper, scissors affair. Rock being axes, paper being swords, and scissors being lances. Depending on what character you choose, or get forced into using, this can make or break your experience. If your weapon's at a disadvantage, you'll take double the damage, and you'll do double the damage if the enemy's weak to the weapon you have on hand. This is a problem for three reasons. 1. Unlike a main series Fire Emblem title, you don't have a large reserve of characters to pull from to compensate for the weaknesses of one. 2. You can't see what enemy units have on hand before you go into a fight, meaning you can't plan ahead. 3. You can't change weapons on the fly like you could in past games, which is utter garbage for reasons that I'll cover in a minute. Before I follow up on that, I need to talk about the other returning mechanic, the pair-up system. This essentially sacrifices one unit's agency to increase the physical capability of another, offering the chance to nullify damage, break an enemy's guard, and pull a double Sunday on their asses with a pair-up super, which can only be triggered when both characters' gauges are full. If you don't like who you have out front, you can switch them around freely. Like a main series game, a support conversation is triggered when two characters have spent enough time paired up to reach A+. Believe it or not, this was something I was really happy to see make a return. Seeing characters from different games bounce off each other in fun ways was genuinely pleasant to see, with the interaction between Camilla and Frederick being my favorite. My only real complaint is that there aren't conversations for every rank like in a main series game. A complaint that I don't feel any guilt in leveling against the game considering how much effort was left over. Among the words and phrases I'd use to describe this game, lazy lies in the top 10, right next to disappointing and overpriced. I think I've made my feelings on the Awakening Fates circle jerk of a character roster clear, but that's made far worse by the fact that half the game's roster is just the other half of the roster with a different coat of paint. An act of self-plagiarism the likes of which the world has probably seen before, but I can't be fucked to check because I'm too busy grinding to get Takumi Girl Edition to a decent level, while rolling my eyes so far into the back of my head that I can see my brain melt into nothingness. I'd be hard-pressed to find a character without a recycled moveset aside from the characters that literally can't be replicated like Korin or Tiki, since there aren't really any other characters that function like them. For characters that don't have unique classes, though, originality be damned. Takumi and Sakura, Leo and Elise, Chrom and Lucina, hell, Cordelia, Hinoka, and Sita are all carbon fucking copies of each other. Sure, their supers are different, but saying that is akin to seeing a dog standing next to another virtually identical dog that has a slight limp. They're nearly functionally identical, and looking at them side by side is enough to make anyone do a big sad. There's a case to be made that Lucina and Chrom having the same moveset is excusable because Chrom passed down his techniques to Lucina, but the others have no chance of formulating an excuse anywhere near convincing enough to make me think that the unabashed copy-paste on display here is acceptable by any stretch. But hey, there's still more characters to unlock after the story's over, right? If by characters you mean one character in two character skins, then yeah, there are more characters to unlock. By grinding your way through two of the game's history mode maps, you can unlock Celica from Fire Emblem Echoes and Lindis from Shadow Dragon. Lindis is actually a brand new character that I had a lot of fun with when I finally unlocked her. But in came Celica to take the wind right the fuck out of my sails, as I spent hours upon hours grinding my way through her map, only to find out that she was a clone of Marth, a character that I so naively believed sported a completely unique set of attacks, but I can see now that my expectations were entirely unreasonable. But it gets worse. The last unlockable character is Anna, from, well, all of them really. On each map and story mode there are 2 mementos to obtain. By fulfilling certain conditions on the battlefield, you can get Anna to open up her shop in the middle of a fucking war zone. If that's not dedication, I don't know what is. Get both mementos on every map in the story mode, and you get to collect all the mementos on the history mode Awakening map. Sounds fun, right? If you said anything other than no, then I sincerely feel for you, and I hope you find a cure. Once you've collected all these pieces and made a nice pretty picture, Anna's recruitment mission pops up. The level floor is absurdly high though, and you'd need at the bare minimum 4 characters above level 80. I'm willing to bet that by the time I finally leveled up my units, the universe had seen the birth and death of a fucking solar system. But it's worth it, right? Well, if you thought yes, then you clearly weren't paying attention. No. In fact, Anna is this game's third Takumi clone. Nearly identical in every way. Oh, fucking joy. Oh, but we're still not done here. We've got DLC to talk about. If you've got severe brain damage like yours truly, then you've got 9 new characters to enjoy. Among the new characters are 3 Fates characters, 3 Shadow Dragon characters, and 3 Awakening characters. 5 of those 9 are, you guessed it, skins. More fucking skins. Were you disappointed by Robin's gameplay style being too special? Well, fret no more, because Tharja's the exact same character. Did you think Camilla was too unique? Well, don't worry, Minerva's here to fix that issue. Were Ryoma's lightning attacks too special for you? Well, don't worry, Owain has them too, despite the fact that it makes no fucking sense. And Niles. Niles? Fucking Niles! He's got a bow and arrow. You know what that means? He's another goddamn Takumi clone! You heard it right, folks. Now you can have a full team of the exact same fucking character. Isn't that great? Oh, and remember how I commended Lyn for standing out with her gameplay style? Well, Omega Force just ain't having that shit. So in comes Navarre to plagiarize the fuck out of her. Do you see the fucking problem? Do you get why I'm so mad at this? This isn't worth $80. It's barely worth $60. I don't care if they're the same class. Make some original shit! Fuck! To me, this is unacceptable. This isn't even on the same plane of existence as acceptable. This is just downright lazy. Yeah. I've entertained the thought that the copy-paste stems from the fact that main series games don't give characters from the same class different moves either, but then I realized, characters like Celica and Marth aren't even from the same game. They don't even function remotely similar to one another. Ryoma has a fucking lightning katana and Owain doesn't. How are they clones? Leo has a damn spellbook that summons trees that's never utilized outside of his Awakening special. I honestly can't bring myself to believe that they made this choice out of anything but sheer laziness. On a positive note, the DLC does bring with it 4 original characters. Azura's spear and water attacks are refreshing to see and provide excellent crowd control. Oboro is pretty much the only pedestrian lance user, and her standing heavy attack draws in large swarms of enemies to wreck their shit. Olivia dual-wields swords while playing nothing like Lyn, thank God, and listening to her adorably apologize her way through the hundreds of enemies she mercilessly slaughters almost made me forget how disappointed this game made me. And finally, Lind, the game's 3rd pedestrian magic user, actually plays nothing like Robin and is quickly becoming one of my favorite units to use. These characters go a long way towards restoring my faith in this game, and I can only hope that more characters follow suit with future DLC. So, do I hate Fire Emblem Warriors? No, not really. Am I disappointed with it? I think the rest of this video should speak for itself. I wanted to like this game. I really did. And I do. I do like this game, but there's a lot holding it back, and I honestly can't bring myself to recommend it above other Warriors games with more effort put into them, like Hyrule. The next time a Nintendo-themed Warriors spin-off comes out, I'm gonna be a fuck sight more careful not to blow my money on it until I know I'm buying something with a lot more effort put into it.